Hello and welcome to You've Seen It Before, movie reviews and connections in mind, and welcome back to another installment in my reaction series to each and every episode of Season 1 of Star Trek Picard. Now, if you've never seen any of my other reaction episodes up until this point, this is just my short-form reaction series where I give my thoughts on the latest episode of Star Trek Picard as it comes out. What I thought about the episode, what I thought worked, what I thought didn't work, as well as some analysis of certain plot developments and character arcs that may seem familiar to you and where you may have seen them before. So before we get too deep into this, let's just get this out of the way. This is going to be a full spoiler reaction to this latest episode. So if you've not seen the latest episode of Star Trek Picard on CBS All Access yet and want to wait until you have, stop the video at this point and come back later. With that in mind, let's get into Star Trek Picard Season 1, Episode 8, entitled Broken Pieces. We pick up where we left off in that Picard and Soji have met up with his crew on Rios' ship, and Agnes is still in a coma after injecting herself with a compound that neutralizes the tracker that Commodore O gave her, so that the Zhat Vash could track her. Also, we get some much needed backstory as to who Soji is, what has been troubling Rios this whole time about his former captain, what happened, why he was drummed out of Starfleet. We get some answers to that. Also, we have some developments on the Borg ship, the Borg Cube, where Eleanor is still on the ship trying to save the XBs from the Romulans trying to kill them. And 7 of 9 comes to the cube to help both save Eleanor and to save these Borg from the Romulans. She expresses some mixed feelings about being on the cube and what it may take to save these Borg. And we also find see the end of this episode end with Soji, Picard, and the crew heading not towards Deep Space 12, where the Starfleet squadron was supposed to rendezvous with them, but instead to a Borg transwarp conduit that would take them directly to Soji's home world, ahead of the Romulan forces that are heading there to destroy them. That all happened in this episode, and again, now that we're getting near the end of this season, I believe there are 2 more episodes after this one. We're starting to get some answers into some mysteries that have been going on. And as anyone knows, with a movie series or a TV series that sets up a whole bunch of mysteries, that it'll take a number of episodes to unravel and make it get bits and pieces, tantalizing glimpses of what the actual answer is to these mysteries. It can either be really satisfying in the end, or really disappointing in the end, or just at least makes sense so that it's more a neutral response. Several mysteries were solved in this episode. One, the reason why the Zhat Vash is and all Romulan society is heading toward is hateful of synthetic life form, and are working so hard to eradicate synthetic life forms, such as killing Dodge, killing Soji and the rest of her people. Which that was an interesting revelation. We'll talk about that a little bit later when I get into things that seem familiar. But we also get the answer as to what happened on Rios' old ship, the USS Ibanemail, I believe it was called, and how that ties into the current story with Soji and the synthetic life forms. That was a little more that was a much better explanation. It added some weight to why Rios was so messed up throughout this whole season thus far, and even though the impetus of how it came to a head really came about in this one episode, and it was kind of resolved in this episode somewhat quickly. I thought it was fairly satisfying. We got some much needed answers to what happened there, and I think it ties in quite nicely with events as we knew them going into that. And we also got the answer of what what happened to the artifact, the Borg Cube, and how that how this one Romulan scientist ended up assimilated by this Borg ship, and how right after this Borg ship assimilated this Romulan vessel, then the whole ship was disabled, and there was left open for the Romulans to claim it. It was that this one Romulan, I believe her name was Veti. I could have misheard that. She was a member of the Zhat Vash who endured the admonition, which was, I guess, a telepathic rites that you grab the artifact and then you see the telepathic vision of what happens if synthetic life forms are allowed to reach a certain point of evolution or something. And it drove this woman insane. And then as the Romulan agent explained it, she broke the cube through her despair when she was assimilated. And this, my theory, going through the series, is that somehow the Romulans got a sample of YSIB's DNA, which, if you've seen Star Trek Voyager, you'll know that YSIB's DNA is coded so that when he's assimilated, it releases a certain kind of virus into a Borg ship that disables it. I figured something like along those routes may have happened, but no, it was her despair of seeing what happened through this artifact that broke the collective mind in this instance. To me, that's smacking a little bit of Star Wars Episode 3 when Padme's dying because somehow she's lost the will to live. And I mean, maybe that is true, but that just smacks of bad writing to me. And that was just a dumb explanation, in my opinion. Maybe there's a more technologically a more tech accurate explanation, a more detailed explanation further down the road as to why that happened. But I feel like that's the explanation we're gonna get stuck with, and that did not work for me at all. That was just like what? That's stupid. But thankfully, it's in the very beginning, and we had enough other good things happen in this episode that you can kind of brush past that. I have a sneaky suspicion that's something that was introduced into the series, and they wrote that into the script thinking that they'd get around to explaining that later, and that was just a placeholder explanation. So that's my impression of that. But overall, I thought everything that happened on Rios' ship with between the crew, it worked really well in my opinion. I thought that character development was necessary. It was enacted well. The exposition was well delivered, and it felt like even though not a whole lot was happening on that ship, it felt like we propelled enough forward in the plot, and it set up the next episode beautifully, in my opinion. And even the stuff on the Borg Cube, even though I think I bet it'll be more involved in the episodes 9 and 10 instead of this episode, but what we had of Elnor and Seven on the cube was interesting and good, and gave us a little insight into what Seven's been feeling this whole time post returning to the Alpha Quadrant and her growth since the end of Voyager. But I feel like they were a little underutilized in this episode. Like I said, I think they're probably going to get more to do in the couple episodes left, hopefully. But overall, I would say enough good things happened in this episode, and it set up the next episode well enough that I can overlook the one or two things that were either dumb, in my opinion, or painfully familiar, which is where we're going to get into now as to things that I thought seemed very familiar. First, I figure this is the appropriate time to point out that the Zhat Vash, this ancient society of Romulans, has been established for at least a few hundred years or so, if not more. They are an ancient society, and they have been sustaining themselves this whole time to stop an ancient evil, as they put it. I'm sure we'll get to explain that later on. You could compare that to other films that have secret societies that have lasted for hundreds or thousands of years to keep a status quo or prevent something from happening, such as Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade with the Brothers of the Cruciform Sword, as well as The Mummy with the Medjai, preventing the rise of Imhotep. But my main point of comparison between in this episode of Picard lies in the explanation that Agnes gives to the crew about why the Zhat Vash is so hell-bent on destroying artificial life throughout their domain and elsewhere, and that the fact that they engineered the uprising of the synthetics on Mars. And it has to do with the admonition, which is this artifact on a planet in an 8-star system that, as Agnes puts it, that a civilization put there thousands of centuries ago that said that they created artificial life, and it evolved to a certain point that once it reached a certain level, something bad happened, and the artifact was placed there as a warning so that no one else would repeat their mistake. That smacks very much to me of the plot of the reboot of Battlestar Galactica, with the fact that the Cylons were artificial life. They were machines that rose up and destroyed humanity because they were because of how advanced they got and how they were being treated by humans, I guess. But the artificial life forms caused the destruction of humanity, and the series focuses on this throughout its run, and then it ends with the humans giving up their technology and in the hopes that it will never happen again. But of course, the conceit of the show is that all of this has happened before, and all of it will happen again, and it ends with the ominous images of modern humans creating more advanced machines and more human-like machines, and it could happen to us. That to me sound, and also the fact that the Cylons from Kobol were trying to get to the 12 colonies because they had created artificial life, and they were trying to warn them against this fate, but of course it happened to them. So all of this is sounding very familiar to me, and this is where I would say to the writers of Picard, if they hadn't already finished it, and this is where I would say the plot needs to tread lightly and try to introduce an element that makes it noticeably different than what Battlestar Galactica had. Who knows? Maybe by artificial intelligence getting to a certain point, they imply that someone will come. Maybe it'll be Galactus that comes, that wipes them out. Who knows? That would be an interesting twist. But yeah, those were the main points of comparison that I had for this episode of Picard. But what did you think of this episode? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What about my analysis? Did you agree? Did you disagree? Did I miss something? I probably missed something. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. Be sure to look for my reaction to next week's episode of Picard around this time, Thursday evening. And yeah, if you liked any of my videos, either this video or any other video on my channel, please give me a like, share, and especially a subscribe. I'd very much appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for watching, and just remember, there is nothing new under the sun, and yes, you have seen it before.